And if I was to press you for your Grand Slam picks for 2025 for the men's side, who would you pick?
My logical call now, I still say that Djokovic, assuming that the knee does not hinder him, because I'm still a bit concerned by him wearing that sleeve, and he still needed the sleeve on the knee in Shanghai. And it's not that he isn't moving well, but I just feel like having to wear that tells me that he's still concerned about it. He's trying to protect it, whatever the case. He won the Olympics with that sleeve, so be it. I'm saying he gets number 25, and that the other three are divided between Carlos and Sinner again. This time I'm giving Sinner 2 and Carlos 1, assuming that he doesn't get suspended and that everything's okay. And I've got my fingers crossed on that. But so be, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if he's out there suspended, and I like Sinner for 2, Carlos for 1, Novak for 1.
Okay, and which one do you think Novak takes?
I'm giving Novak Wimbledon.
Wimbledon, okay.
Yeah.
Carlos Roland Garros, or
Australia's gonna. I won't be shocked if he gets Australia, but I think if I had to choose between the two, I'm gonna say Wimbledon right now. But as I say, I think he's gonna make quite a go of it in Melbourne. And then the other two guys, I think they'll, instead of dividing 4 this time, they get 3 between them. That's how I'm looking at it. What do you think?
It's really tough. It's really, really tough. Part of me thinks, could someone like Zverev finally make the leap, and maybe if Novak's not 100%, and Carlos and Yannick, who knows? Maybe Yannick gets banned and Carlos is injured and he's not looking his best. Maybe he could win it, but yeah, I mean Novak, if he's 100%, I think he does win a slam. I actually have a weird feeling that Roland Garros, he could potentially win that. And the reason I say that is because in the last few years, I almost feel like he has been the best clay courter on the men's side. And like we saw Carlos struggle with him this year, even at the Olympics, and last year he lost to Roland Garros. Sinner's not the most comfortable on the clay. He's a very good clay courter, but he's more comfortable on hard court. I think it's fair to say he's better on grass as well, generally. So I could actually see him winning that. And then Yannick, I think, it's going to be tough to beat him at the Australian Open and US Open. I think it's really tough. I don't see Carlos beating him in Australia. I think the conditions are just too suited to Yannick, despite obviously Yannick losing to Carlos.
Well, I think Carlos is, I agree with that. I think Carlos I wish he wasn't playing these exhibitions. I'm happy for the people running the exhibitions because he's such a great ambassador for the game, and he'll be cooperative with them and the fan. He's not going to cheat the fans. They're going to see great tennis from him, but this should be a time when he's sort of gearing up and practicing and maybe resting his brain and his body a bit instead of dealing with these exos. And so, but good point about Djokovic. Look what he's done. The proof of the pudding in what you're saying is let's go back. He had won it in 16 finally, and then 21 he gets it again. He loses to Rafa in 22, and then he wins it again in 23, and he didn't lose this past year at Roland Garros. He had a default in the quarters. That's what's so great about him is that you can make a case for why he should win any of those 4. That's why I think he's somehow got to get one of them, is that we think of him through the years as the best hardcourt player. Now it's debatable because of Sinner, but boy, he's still a fantastic hardcourt player. He's become better and better on the grass, which is why he never seems to miss the finals of Wimbledon anymore. So he's just such a consummate all-surface player. You could make the case for why he should win any of those. But I just got to believe that along the line there, whether it's Melbourne, whether it's Wimbledon, Roland Garros, and then the Open, he's had a lot of bad luck. You think about as great as he's been on hard courts and the 10 finals, and he's only won that tournament 4 times only. But as great as he is on hard, we would think maybe he should have won it 6 or 7. So I feel like that's how he's looking at it too. I suspect that, look, I'm going to go after everything next year. I'm not going to burden myself and put a lot of unnecessary pressure that it has to be Australia. I'm going to try hard. If I can get it done, I'm getting it done. But he's got to feel like he stays healthy. He's going to give himself 4 very good cracks at it.
Yeah, agreed. Which slam do you think Carlos takes? Because you're saying he only takes 1 as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tall. It wouldn't shock me at Wimbledon because he's won the last 2 years. But I'm thinking maybe Carlos. Maybe it's the U.S. with him. Maybe he comes back and wins the Open, gets his second Open.
Okay, and so then Yannick wins Roland Garros, which would be big for him because he'd win
Yeah, I
a
mean,
non-hardcourt slam.
yeah,
To be fair,
obviously that's yeah. I mean, I know. I don't think it's his best surface, but I think he's capable. I think
yeah,
had Sinner been able to finish off Carlos, I would have liked his chances against Zverev in the final.
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's
Yeah,
definitely not out of the realms of possibility. I think all three players are just such great all-rounders when it
yeah,
comes
they
to
are. They
surfaces. So
are.
it's just it's
And
difficult
they
to pick.
play. They're playing essentially the same way in every court. You know, the game these days there's not as big a difference. You have there are adjustments that have to be made, but yeah, all three of them are capable on any of the surfaces. But I think it's a good point you're making on Novak, and I think he knows that too. And the thing that Novak loves about Roland Garros now is that there's no more Rafa, and therefore, you know, that was always the worry in the back of his mind. Everybody else's too, except that he would go into the tournament like 2 years ago. In 2022, he actually played 4 pretty darn good matches before he played Rafa. He was really playing well, and then he got kind of tight against Rafa, and he could have been. It was had a chance in the fourth set. It was should have gotten it into a fifth set, and he couldn't get there, and lost it in a 4-set tiebreak. But that was probably the only guy that was going to beat him that year. Was Rafa. So I feel like now he does go in there thinking kind of the way you do. I'm as comfortable, maybe more comfortable on this stuff than the other guys. And even though Carlos grew up on clay, you know, I've dealt with him here, and he saw that Carlos, of course, had collapsed against him with the cramps at the French Open 23, and then now that he beats him head on in 2 tiebreaks in the Olympics this year. So yeah, he'll be. Listen, he can come up with a good case for any of those in terms of how he looks at it and what he believes he can accomplish. And look, I think the men's. It's interesting. We talked about all the women, and there are more women. There's potential maybe for more surprises among the women next year than there are among the men. That's what it comes down to, because I still think we're looking at this elite cast of Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, you know, and I don't have faith in Zverev. I have this faith that he goes far and that we're going to see him deep into a lot of the majors, but somehow, I don't know, I think Roland Garros was indicative of it. And then, of course, he's got this issue with Fritz, and he keeps losing to Fritz as he did at Wimbledon and the Open. And so there, again, you mentioned Medvedev at the start. There are guys that can do that to Zverev too. So I don't necessarily trust him. And we talked about Medvedev, and I don't think Fritz is winning majors. And so go on down the list, and you look at people like Draper, and Draper might be the one of the few guys that could spring a big surprise. But I still think we're looking at that elite group. They're the ones that will control the climate at the majors.
Yeah, there's definitely a gap. There's quite a sizable gap, I think, between those three and the rest. I don't think there's the same on the women's tour as you're saying, which is interesting. Who knows? I mean, maybe someone will surprise us on the men's side and really break through, and they might need a slice of luck potentially as well.